Hello gamers and welcome to Xbot and Pony. My name is Phil.
My name is Nick.
And for today's discussion, we've obviously just had the Ubisoft conference where they announced some big games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and they've given us an update on Far Cry 6, but there was one game that was missing from their announcements that made us all go, well, what's happening? Where the hell is it? And that is Beyond Good and Evil 2. Now, they announced that a couple of years ago at E3. Everyone was super excited. It looked stunning and exciting, and then it disappeared. Now, Nick and I, about a year ago, just shy of a year ago, actually got a chance to see the game in action, and we thought we would share with you what we saw. Now, keep in mind that obviously the game may have changed a lot in that time, and there may be some improvements or alterations to their plans. We don't know what's happening currently, but about a year ago, it was looking pretty good. What do you reckon, Nick?
Yeah, I was impressed. Wasn't blown away, but I was impressed with the new engine they've shown off. Definitely a different take on the original game. If anyone's played it or knows it, it's much of a platformer, story-driven platformer.
Yeah. Well, give us a bit of a background, Nick. Where were we when we saw all of this?
So we went to a thing called Ubisoft Experience in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, and it was in September last year. A paid event, which all the money went to charity. So you got to rock up. It was a 2-day event, and every couple of hours they showed off footage for Beyond Good and Evil 2 and footage for Watch Dogs Legions, which was pretty cool. And they also had panels of discussions on Far Cry and a few other things like that with some pretty big industry heads in there. My mate Steve Farley and a few other people. They had all the Ubisoft guys, developers from Far Cry and lead designer in there talking about that in a panel, and it was really good.
It was very interesting. Yeah.
And it's really, really cool for fans to be able to do that. And obviously there was games out for people to play and food and some VR experiences as well.
There's an Assassin's Creed VR game, which just annoyed me because it was actually really fun and it worked. But they're never going to release it. Like, ever. No. Never. And I remember asking the guys there, I said, hey, is this like a preview of something that could be coming? And they were like, oh, I don't even know if this is like beyond what we're doing here. Like they didn't seem to really know. So I took it as a no. It's not.
We haven't heard nothing on it since then. So it's one of those strange things.
So in terms of Beyond Good and Evil 2, though, guys, if you can imagine, what we did is the events were all behind closed doors. So you were invited at particular times to come and sit in the audience. There was restrictions on how many people would come into the room. You weren't allowed, obviously, to use your phones or recording devices or anything like that. And when we sat down, actually, we got some cool little merchandise that I still have. Yeah, some little key rings and things like that. Yeah. And they actually went through a live gameplay of what was going on. So I had the guy with the controller there showing us what was happening. The differences that you're going to see when the game eventually comes out is it's no longer sort of a platformer type thing. It's definitely more open world. And it's seriously open world, isn't it, Nick? Like insanely huge. Yeah. So Nick, maybe you can remember a few more details, but how I remember it is the game started out in sort of like a tomb type thing.
Yeah.
And it had this kind of Indian motif, so like Hindi motif with elephants and things like that all around. And it looked stunning, absolutely stunning. And they said that you weren't technically playing as the original Jade. I think it was a clone of Jade.
Yes. Yeah. That was a clone because it's set in a different time set, so it's a prequel. It's not a sequel, if I can remember correctly, and it's set at a different time. So it's very much an online game. They're going to be pushing that a lot. So that was probably the downside. It looked like it's going to be online only all the time.
Yes. Massive, and that's the killer, isn't it? It really is.
Iffy point of it. But in saying that, what we did see was fairly impressive. Very early on, some of the animations and all that for the combat, and that was a bit off. But the world they were developing with this new engine was incredible. So you're in this, like we said, underground. So imagine you're on a planet, but you're underground, and then you come out from under the ground into this massive city like Grand Theft Auto.
like
But
bigger. Like it looked like
it's
something
huge.
out of The Fifth Element is the best way of
Exactly. It's the
describing it. This
best way to
huge
describe it.
futuristic city with vehicles flying around,
Yeah.
absolutely stunning.
It's a
Yeah.
living live world, not a city. It's a living live world. Like you're in a city, but this thing goes around this whole little planet, so to speak, and it's huge. And then again, you can go back down underground for more underground tunnels, and there was very much like Grand Theft Auto where you're getting chased in the thing, or even like Fifth Element where you're getting chased by police and you have your radar and the alert thing. But then they showed how good the engine was by leaving the atmosphere and going into space.
Yeah. So she jumped into a little spaceship and they flew up above the city. So you could see already how big the city was. And then they showed you how big the country was, the continent was. And they took you into outer space. And there was a point where actually she had like this really thin, I can't remember how they describe, like a membrane type
Yes,
thing over her. So Jade could actually get out of the ship and walk on top of the ship and look at the planet below. And already you and I are like, our jaws are hit the floor. Like there was no loading
no
time,
nothing.
nothing from going inside this tomb into this amazing city, out and leaving the planet, and then being able to look down on it. And then they revealed that you can go to other planets. That you can actually, and again, no loading times. Clearly, that powerful SSD stuff that we were talking about.
We didn't know at the time, but that was the SSD.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they were talking about. So I think when this game releases, it could potentially be the first game on PC that requires an SSD.
Maybe, yeah.
Because we keep saying this, like, hang on, what's going to happen in the future when if game developers are saying that these SSDs are the main thing, along with CPU and GPU now, the SSDs in there as just as important, then there has to come a point where mechanical drives are no good. And your Xbox One or your PS4 or your PC with mechanical drive can't play these games because it can't load the assets enough. Whether they release a dumbed down version where you fly into space and you get a loading time, and then I don't know. I doubt that because that takes away the whole immersion and atmosphere. And the whole purpose of this built engine was to do that, was to be able to fly from one planet to the next, go inside the planet, on top of the planet, to one country to the next, and have no loading times. You just keep playing. And I think they said 3-player. Was it 3-player online?
That's what it sounded like. Yeah. So we were very lucky. We sort of hung around at the end because if you can imagine, they had all these display boards with different artwork and things like that. And we were having a look at it. And the developers actually came over and started chatting to us and asking us what we enjoyed about it and whatnot. And the thing that we talked to them about was about the online side of it. And again, this may not affect some viewers, but for us, it put us off a little bit because they said it was online only. Right, so there was no single player campaign. It was online only. And yes, you could play with your friends, and that sounds great. You can go into these tombs together, you can battle together, you can leave the planet, you can go and explore. That does sound like an amazing experience, and I'm definitely keen to try it. But the online only bit made us nervous. And I think when we were talking to the developers, maybe you can back me up on this, you could see there was that hesitation because they were sort of like, yeah, that's all it's going to be. It is going to be online only. And we even said to them, please, please, please don't fill this with microtransactions and loot boxes, because this game meant so much to us and we just didn't want that stuff in it. And we know that Ubisoft has generally moved towards this games as a service thing. And you could see the developers were like they wouldn't confirm either way whether that stuff was in there.
Very mum on it. They just.
But they were, but I don't know. I hope there was some pause. I hope they kind of went, oh, maybe we won't put as many in. I'm really hopeful it's not going to happen. But that stuff made us nervous that this was being built from the ground up to be online only for next gen.
Yeah, so that's probably the only issue we had with everything we've seen. Being very early on, it was very impressive, and they stressed multiple times that this was not a 2-2-1 game. This was probably not even a 2-2-2 game. We're looking probably 2023. It's a long way out, so I'm sure 2022 is probably their target. But they'd only really been given the green light not long ago. Like we had trailers and everything, but they hadn't really started making the game yet. So it's going to be one of those things. And yes, Garfield wants his dinner.
Garfield's annoyed as well.
It's like, why is it online only? It can't be online only. Give me my dinner.
Yeah.
Give me my dinner.
Oh, bless him.
So
Yeah. So, yeah, just to sort of summarize there, guys, overall, what we saw, it looks stunning. Like it is proper next gen. There's no doubt about it. Just the seamlessness of it, of starting in this kind of beautiful Hindi tomb and then leaving and going out into the city, then in outer space and going to other planets. There's no doubt that when they reveal it again, it is going to blow people away. Like it absolutely will. But the thing that makes us a little bit uncomfortable is that it is online only. But you guys might feel differently about it.
saying
Let us
that, I
know.
mean, look at the big games at the moment. They're all online only. I mean, your Fortnites and all that, there really are, there's a big audience out there. So maybe this can get in there and be that little bit different and not just be an online only shooter, but be this online adventure game that works really well. And yeah, when you do get to see from inside a planet to on top of a planet to just out into space, it's just amazing. It's just
Pretty special.
we couldn't believe it when we seen it, and
Yeah.
everybody in the room was just in shock, basically.
All right. Well, tell us what you think. Are you still excited for Beyond Good and Evil 2, despite some of the things that we've said? Are you more excited than you were before? As we said before, keep in mind that this information is nearly a year old, and the game may be very different now, and it may have gone in different directions and been more polished. But these are the basics of what we saw. Let us know below in the comments.
Yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll just finish with Ubisoft did announce today that another Ubisoft Forward is coming towards the end of the year. So fingers crossed we might get some more Beyond Good and Evil then. They did indicate later in the year, so maybe around Game Awards time or something like that, or just before. So let's hope we get some new games. Well, they did say new games, new unannounced games as well. So another look at Beyond Good and Evil, and hopefully maybe some Splinter Cell or something.
That would be nice.
Something different from Ubisoft for a change.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, guys.
All right, then, guys. Thanks a lot.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye.